Claire Mitchell adjusts the IV drip with steady hands, her wedding ring catching the hospital room's fluorescent light. The man in the bed stares at her with confused eyes, his mouth working silently around words that won't come. She smooths his blanket with professional care, her touch gentle despite the storm raging in her chest. 30 years ago, Mark Richardson left her standing at the altar in her grandmother's lace dress. Now she holds his life in her hands, and he has no idea who she really is. Before we begin, tell me, where are you listening from right now? And don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a story.
Claire enters room 314, carrying fresh linens, her soft-soled shoes silent on polished floors. The autumn sunlight streams through tall windows, casting golden rectangles across sterile walls. She can smell antiseptic and the lingering scent of fear that clings to stroke patients. Her name badge reads C. Mitchell, her maiden name reclaimed after her divorce 5 years ago. "Good morning, Mr. Richardson." Mark's eyes track her movement as she sets down the linens. His silver hair lies flat against expensive pillows. She can hear his labored breathing, see the frustration building behind his pale blue eyes. The stroke took his speech 3 weeks ago, along with most movement on his right side. "Let's get you cleaned up," she says, her voice professionally warm. Mark makes a guttural sound, half protest, half plea. His left hand grips the bed rail with white knuckles. She notices the pale band on his ring finger, where a wedding ring once lived. His wife filed for divorce the day after his stroke, taking half his fortune and all of his dignity. The irony tastes bitter on Claire's tongue, but her hands remain gentle as she begins her work. "I'm going to move your arm now," Claire says, lifting his paralyzed right limb with practiced care. Mark's eyes widen as she touches him. Something flickers there. Recognition or confusion? She can't tell which. His skin feels paper-thin under her fingers. She can smell his expensive cologne, still applied daily by the previous shift, though it can't mask the scent of helplessness that surrounds him. "You're making good progress," she lies smoothly. "The doctors are pleased." Mark's good hand reaches toward her face, trembling with effort. His fingers brush her cheek before falling back to the bed. Claire's breath catches. That same gesture, tender and desperate, that he'd made the night before their wedding when he'd promised to love her forever. "Rest now," she whispers, stepping back from his bedside. But Mark continues staring at her with those confused, searching eyes. His mouth moves soundlessly, trying to form words that refuse to come. Claire can hear the machines beeping steadily, monitoring a life that hangs in careful balance. She turns toward the door, but Mark's grunt stops her cold. Claire looks back to find Mark pointing at her with his good hand, his eyes wide with dawning recognition. Her heart hammers against her ribs. The afternoon sunlight shifts, throwing new shadows across his face. She can smell her own nervous sweat mixing with the room's clinical odors. "Do you need something for pain?" she asks, keeping her voice level. Mark shakes his head frantically. His mouth works harder, desperate sounds emerging from his throat. Spittle gathers at the corners of his lips. Claire can see the intelligence trapped behind his damaged brain, fighting to make connections that won't quite form. "I'll get the doctor," she says, moving toward the call button. Mark's good hand shoots out, catching her wrist with surprising strength. His grip feels cold and desperate against her warm skin. Her eyes bore into hers with an intensity that makes her stomach flip. "Let go, Mr. Richardson." But Mark holds on. His thumb traces the thin scar on her wrist, a scar he put there 30 years ago when she cut herself opening champagne bottles for our engagement party. His eyes fill with tears, and Claire realizes he knows exactly who she is. Claire gently pries his fingers from her wrist, her professional mask slipping for just a moment. Mark sees it, the flash of recognition, of buried pain. His good hand reaches for her again, but she steps beyond his grasp. The machines continue their steady chorus, indifferent to the drama unfolding. "I think you're confused," she says carefully. "I'm just your nurse." Mark makes a sound like a wounded animal. Tears stream down his cheeks, soaking into the expensive pillowcase his daughter brought from home. She can smell salt and desperation. His left hand pounds weakly against the mattress in frustration. "I'm sure you need to rest." She straightens his blanket with forced normalcy, but Mark won't stop staring at her. His eyes follow her every movement as she tidies the room, his mouth working silently around her name. She can feel his gaze like a weight on her shoulders, heavy with 30 years of unspoken apologies. At the door, she pauses without turning around. "Sleep well, Mr. Richardson." Behind her, Mark's broken sobs fill the sterile air, and Claire knows there's no hiding anymore.
The next morning, Claire finds a note on Mark's bedside table written in shaky left-handed script. "Please don't run away again." Her hands tremble as she reads the words. Mark watches her from his pillows, his eyes red-rimmed from crying. The morning light reveals how thin he's become, how the stroke has carved away his former arrogance. She can smell fresh coffee from the nurse's station, hear the soft beeping of monitors throughout the ward. "I don't know what you mean," she says, folding the note. Mark shakes his head, pointing at her with his good hand. His mouth forms silent words, "Claire, Claire, Claire." She can see the desperation in his face, the need to be understood, to be forgiven. "My name is Catherine Mitchell," she lies, though her voice wavers. Mark grabs a pen from the bedside table, scrawling frantically on a napkin. "St. Mary's Church, white dress, you waited." The words hit her like physical blows. Claire sinks into the visitor's chair, her legs suddenly unsteady. She can smell the ghost of orange blossoms, hear phantom organ music echoing through her memory. "That was a long time ago," she whispers, and Mark's eyes fill with tears of relief. "Why didn't you come?" Claire asks, her voice barely audible over the morning bustle outside the room. Mark's good hand shakes as he writes, "Scared, young, stupid." "You could have called? Written a letter? Something?" "Ashamed," he scribbles, tears falling onto the paper and smudging the ink. Claire watches him struggle with the pen, this once powerful man reduced to broken words on crumpled napkins. She can smell his fear sweat mixing with antiseptic, hear the way his breath catches when he tries to speak. "I waited for 3 hours, in that dress, in front of all our friends," he writes frantically. I know. Sorry." "Sorry doesn't give me back my 20s, Mark. Sorry doesn't undo 30 years of wondering what I did wrong." He drops the pen, covering his face with his good hand. His shoulders shake with silent sobs. Claire can see the boy she once loved hiding inside this broken man, but the woman she's become feels only hollow satisfaction. "I need to check your vitals," she says, standing abruptly. But as she reaches for his wrist to take his pulse, Mark catches her hand and holds it against his cheek. "Don't," she says, trying to pull away, but Mark's grip is surprisingly strong. His tears wet her palm. She can feel his stubble, rough and unfamiliar, yet somehow achingly familiar too. The monitors beep faster as his heart rate climbs. Outside the window, she can hear traffic, normal people living normal lives, while inside this room, time has folded back on itself. "I loved you," she whispers. "I would have followed you anywhere."
Mark nods against her hand, his eyes closed tight. When he opens them, she sees the young man who used to recite poetry to her in Central Park, who promised they'd travel the world together, who swore he'd never leave her side. He writes with his free hand, "Loved you too, still do." Love isn't running away. Claire says, finally pulling her hand free. Love is staying when things get scary. Mark's face crumples. He writes, I was a coward. Yes, you were. The honesty hangs between them like a bridge neither knows how to cross. Claire can smell his expensive soap, see the way his hospital gown hangs loose on his diminished frame. This man once owned half of Manhattan. Now he can't even speak her name aloud. Are you going to hurt me? He writes, his handwriting shaky with fear. Claire stares at the question, and for a long moment, she honestly doesn't know the answer. I'm going to take care of you, Claire says finally. That's what nurses do. Mark searches her face for hidden meaning, but Claire's expression reveals nothing. She checks his blood pressure with practiced efficiency, her touch impersonal now. He can feel the warmth of her skin through the stethoscope, smell the lavender soap she uses. BP's a little high, she notes on his chart. I'll mention it to Dr. Peterson. Mark writes frantically, please don't leave me. I work the day shift, Mr. Richardson. I'll be here. Not the job, me. Please don't leave me. Claire looks down at him, this powerful man reduced to begging, this ghost from her past who haunts her present. She can see the terror in his eyes, the knowledge that she holds all the power now. His good hand reaches toward her, trembling. I have other patients, she says, moving toward the door. Claire, he manages to say aloud, the word barely audible but perfectly clear. She stops with her hand on the doorframe, not turning around. In the hallway, she can hear other nurses chatting, phones ringing, the normal sounds of a hospital day beginning. But in room 314, silence stretches taut like a wire. My name is Catherine, she says without looking back. Days pass in careful routine. Claire tends to Mark with professional detachment, checking his vitals, adjusting his medications, helping him with physical therapy exercises. His progress is slow but steady. The doctors are encouraged. His daughter visits twice, stays for 10 minutes each time, and leaves looking guilty. Mark fills notebooks after notebooks with messages for Claire. Remember the bookstore on 5th Street? You loved those terrible horror movies. You laughed when I told bad jokes. Claire reads each note with a stone face, then files them away in his medical chart. She can smell the desperation in his handwriting, feel his eyes following her around the room like a lost dog. The other nurses comment on how devoted she is to this difficult patient. He only responds to you, Dr. Peterson observes during rounds. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. Mark's physical therapist reports breakthrough moments. He's trying harder than any patient I've seen. Something's motivating him. Claire knows what that something is. She sees it in his eyes every morning when she enters his room. Hope and terror warring for dominance. He's afraid she'll disappear again, like he did to her all those years ago. At night, she goes home to her small apartment and cries into her pillow, mourning the girl she used to be. 3 weeks into his recovery, Mark manages to stand with assistance for the first time. Claire supports his weight as he takes shaking steps around the room. His good arm drapes across her shoulders, and she can smell his skin, feel his breathing against her neck. You're doing great, she encourages, though her voice sounds strained. Mark stops walking and looks down at her. They're standing close enough that she can see gold flecks in his blue eyes, can count the new lines that 30 years have etched around them. His good hand comes up to touch her face. Claire, he whispers, clearer this time. Don't. I'm sorry. So sorry. Keep walking, Mr. Richardson. But Mark doesn't move. His eyes fill with tears that threaten to spill over. She can feel his body trembling with exhaustion and emotion. The afternoon sunlight streams through the window, illuminating them both in golden light. I dream about you, he says haltingly. Every night. The dress, your face, waiting. Claire's resolve wavers for just a moment, and Mark sees it. His hand cups her cheek, thumb brushing away a tear she didn't realize had fallen. I never stopped loving you, he whispers. And despite everything,
Despite 30 years of hurt and anger and unanswered questions, Claire almost believes him. "Sit down," Claire says, guiding him back to bed with shaking hands. Mark allows himself to be settled against the pillows, but he doesn't release her wrist. His thumb traces circles on her skin, the same gesture that once made her melt with desire. Now it makes her stomach churn with conflicted emotions. "You can't just say that," she whispers. "You can't just say you love me and expect it to fix everything." "I know," he says, his speech slurred but understandable. "But it's true." Claire pulls free of his grip and walks to the window. Outside, she can see the city rushing past. Cars, people, life moving forward while she's trapped in this room with her past. She can hear Mark's labored breathing behind her, smell the fear radiating from his hospital bed. "Do you know what happened to me?" she asks, without turning around. Mark makes a questioning sound. "After I left you at the altar, I mean. Do you know what my life became?" Silence stretches between them. Claire can hear her own heartbeat, loud as thunder in her ears. When she finally turns around, Mark is staring at her with wide, terrified eyes. "I married someone else 6 months later," she says quietly. "A rebound relationship that lasted 15 miserable years." Mark's face goes white as his pillowcase.
"His name was David," Claire continues, her voice steady despite the tears streaming down her cheeks. "He was kind and patient and everything you weren't." Mark writes frantically, "Did you love him?" "I tried to. God, how I tried." She can smell the antiseptic, hear the machines monitoring his weakening vital signs. The afternoon light has shifted, casting longer shadows across the room. Mark's good hand grips the bed rail so tightly his knuckles have gone white. "But every time he touched me, I thought of you. Every anniversary, every birthday, every moment that should have been happy, you were there like a ghost." Mark's breathing becomes labored. The monitor beside his bed beeps faster. "We had no children because I couldn't bear the thought of bringing babies into a marriage built on a lie. Claire, please." She knew, David knew I didn't love him the way he deserved. It broke him slowly, year by year, until he couldn't look at me without disappointment. Mark tries to write something, but his hand shakes too badly to form letters. "He filed for divorce 5 years ago, and you know what he said?" Mark stares at her with desperate eyes, and Claire delivers the killing blow. "He said, I was still waiting at that altar, still wearing that white dress, still hoping for a ghost to come back and claim me." Mark makes a sound like a wounded animal. His good hand clutches at his chest, and for a moment Claire fears he's having another stroke. The monitors scream warnings. She reaches for the call button, but Mark grabs her wrist. "Don't," he gasps. "Stay with me. You need medical attention. I need you to forgive me." Claire stares down at him, this broken man who shattered her life 30 years ago with his cowardice. His face is gray with pain, his breathing shallow and rapid. She can smell his fear sweat, hear the desperation in his voice. "Please," he whispers. "I can't die knowing you hate me." "I don't hate you, Mark." "Then what?" Claire touches his face gently, her fingers tracing the lines that time and guilt have carved there. "He's aged badly," she realizes. "Success and money couldn't buy him peace." "I pity you," she says softly, "because you've been running from that altar for 30 years, and you still haven't learned how to stay." Mark closes his eyes, tears squeezing out from beneath his lids. The crisis passes. Mark's vital signs stabilize, though he remains weak and shaken. Claire sits beside his bed in the gathering dusk, listening to his labored breathing. The evening shift will arrive soon, but she can't bring herself to leave. "I tried to find you," Mark says suddenly, his voice barely above a whisper. "When? 5 years after? 10 years? 20 years?" Claire says nothing, but she doesn't move away when he reaches for her hand. "I hired detectives, Flew to cities where someone thought they had seen you. I kept hoping. Hoping for what? That you'd still be waiting. The admission hangs between them like incense in an empty church. Claire can feel the weight of all those years, all that wasted time pressing down on her chest like stones. But you never came to find me yourself. No, you sent strangers instead. Yes. Claire squeezes his hand gently, and Mark's eyes fly open in surprise. She can see hope flickering there like candlelight in a storm. You're still a coward, Mark Richardson. I know. And I'm still angry. I know. But she doesn't let go of his hand, and Mark takes that as the gift it is. I need to tell you something, Claire says as darkness settles over the room. Mark nods, his eyes never leaving her face. The evening sounds of the hospital drift through the closed door. Footsteps, muffled conversations, the distant ring of phones. In their small bubble of space, time feels suspended. When David left me, I thought about finding you. Why didn't you? Because I was afraid you'd run again. Mark's face crumples with shame. I would have. I know. But not now, he says urgently. I can't run now. I can't even walk without help. Claire almost smiles at the bitter irony. So it took a stroke to make you brave? It took losing everything to make me see what I'd already lost. The words ring with truth. She can hear it in his voice, see it in the way his eyes hold hers without flinching. This broken man in a hospital bed is more honest than the young coward who fled their wedding 30 years ago. Your wife left you, she observes, the day after my stroke, took half my money and all my pride. Do you blame her? Mark considers this carefully. No, I wasn't a good husband to her either. The honesty in his admission catches Claire off guard, and she realizes something has fundamentally changed in the man she once loved.
Over the weeks, something shifts between them. Claire still maintains professional distance, but the walls around her heart develop small cracks. Mark works harder in physical therapy, determined to prove he can stay, can fight, can be worthy of her care. "Why are you still here?" she asks one morning while checking his medication chart. "What do you mean? You could request another nurse, have me transferred to a different floor." Mark's good hand finds hers, his fingers intertwining with practiced ease. The gesture feels as natural as breathing, as if 30 years haven't passed since he last held her hand. "Because you're the only one who sees me," he says simply. "Sees what?" "The man I could have been, the man I still might be." Claire looks down at their joined hands. His skin feels warm and familiar, like coming home after a long journey. She can smell his soap, hear the steady rhythm of his breathing, feel the calluses on his palm from weeks of gripping therapy equipment. "I see the man who left me at the altar. I know, but you also see the man who's begging you to stay." The truth in his words makes her chest tight with emotion. "I have something for you," Mark says one afternoon, reaching into his bedside drawer with his good hand. Claire watches as he pulls out a small velvet box, faded and worn with age. Her breath catches in her throat. She recognizes it instantly. Her grandmother's engagement ring, the one he'd proposed with in Central Park under falling autumn leaves. "Where did you get this?" "I never returned it. Kept it. All these years." Claire's hands shake as she opens the box. The small diamond catches the afternoon light, throwing tiny rainbows across the hospital room walls. She can smell the phantom scent of roses, hear ghostly wedding bells echoing in her memory. "This was supposed to be yours," he says softly. "Should have been yours 30 years ago." "Mark." He's not proposing, he quickly says. "I know I don't have that right anymore. I just wanted you to have it back." Claire stares at the ring.
this tiny circle of metal that once represented all her dreams of the future. Now it looks like a relic from someone else's life, beautiful but belonging to the past. "Keep it," she says, closing the box gently. "But it's yours." "No," she says, her voice steady and sure. "It belongs to the girl I used to be." Mark's eyes fill with tears as understanding dawns. The day Mark is scheduled to be discharged, Claire enters his room to find him dressed in street clothes for the first time in 2 months. He's sitting in the chair by the window, looking out at the city below. His recovery has been remarkable. His speech is nearly normal, and he can walk with only a cane for support. "Ready to go home?" she asks, though the word sounds hollow. "Where is home?" he responds, not looking at her. "My wife sold the penthouse. My daughter won't return my calls. My friends disappeared with my money." Claire sets down her final medical notes, her official duties to him complete. In an hour, someone else will wheel him to the lobby, and he'll disappear from her life again. The thought should bring relief, but instead she feels empty. "You'll figure it out." "Will I?" Mark turns to face her, and she sees something new in his eyes. Not hope or desperation, but acceptance. He looks older, worn down by months of physical and emotional struggle, but somehow more peaceful. "I want you to know something," he says quietly. "These past 2 months, having you take care of me, it's been the happiest I've been in 30 years. "Mark, I know you don't believe me, but it's true." Claire can smell the autumn air drifting through the open window, hear the city sounds that will soon swallow him up. Her throat feels tight with unshed tears. "I believe you," she whispers. At the elevator, Mark pauses with his hand on his walker. Claire has walked him this far, though protocol doesn't require it. Other staff members bustle past them, busy with their own duties, unaware of the quiet drama unfolding. "Will I see you again?" Mark asks. Claire considers lying, offering some polite evasion. Instead, she chooses honesty. "I don't know. If you ever want to talk, to catch up, I'll be at the Riverside Rehabilitation Center for the next 6 months. Physical therapy? Learning how to live again." The elevator arrives with a soft ding. Mark steps inside, then turns to face her one last time. The fluorescent lights overhead cast harsh shadows on his face, but his eyes hold a clarity she hasn't seen since they were young. "Thank you," he says simply, "for everything. Take care of yourself, Mark." "You too, Claire." The elevator doors close between them, and Claire stands alone in the empty hallway. For a moment, she feels the ghost of that 22-year-old girl in the white dress, still waiting, still hoping. Then she takes a deep breath, straightens her shoulders, and walks back to her duties. 6 months later, she'll find herself standing outside the Riverside Rehabilitation Center on a snowy December evening, holding 2 cups of coffee and wondering if some endings are really new beginnings in disguise. But that's a story for another day.